So you may have seen from my title that the world is made for old people. Here are my reasons. So I had recently come to the conclusion that the world is specifically made for old people. I feel like I've always known this, but I gathered some information myself when I was doing some research for a college paper. While I gather resources to build a house, I will talk about how hard owning a home can be for young people like me. I will also talk about how old people have more of an advantage with their financial situation in comparison to the people who are just starting out. While I want people to learn from my video, please understand that this is a rant based off a few things I've learned from my research and from observations I made from people online. Since this is just a rant video and most of this information is just coming directly out of my brain, there's not really going to be any factual evidence in this video. Now that that's settled, let's begin. My research for college allowed me to see that people in the 1980s were able to get a job that was higher quality than the jobs people have now. What I took from this information was that it was incredibly easy for them to have a secure income no matter how low their job was paying, but now people are struggling no matter what. For most people, this probably doesn't really come off as a surprise, since you can see a lot of people talk about this all the time on TikTok or Instagram, since TikTok is going to be deleted by the time this video comes out. But old people don't seem to understand that you can't still buy a house while working minimum wage anymore. While it seems like I may be exaggerating, most people now cannot pay rent just on one minimum wage job alone. Maybe it would be possible if you only had to pay rent, but I think a lot of people don't realize that you have to pay for other stuff. Groceries, bills, insurance, even driving to work, the place that's supposed to make you money, costs you money because you have to pay gas, and gas is super expensive now. Gas has always been super expensive, but it skyrocketed the moment I was able to drive. But the point is, when you add up all of these expenses and consider the cost of living that people have now, then it just seems like it's a lot higher than what the older generations had to deal with. But in response, older people ignore this, and then they choose to call everybody lazy, when that probably couldn't be further from the truth. How often have you heard the phrase, people now don't want to work? Nobody wants to work for nothing. While I was doing my college research, I noticed something important that not many people seem to mention. Basically, I found out that employers usually prefer people who already have experience with a certain job, and those who are just starting out will have a harder time getting employed in that position. Again, I feel like this shouldn't be much of a surprise because obviously if you're an employer, you're gonna want somebody who knows what they're doing into the position that's opening up, which is why when you look at the resumes, you're gonna choose somebody with 10 years of experience versus somebody who has 1 year of experience. This may sound like a simple concept, and yes, it does make sense from the employer's perspective, but when you consider that you have to have a job to get experience, you can definitely see how older people have more of an advantage in this type of situation. Since our society prefers experience over a degree, then it kinda just seems like you can get the highest degree possible, but an older person has a higher chance of actually getting the job just because they have more experience than you. However, I'm not saying a degree won't help you at all, since I think it kinda makes up for a little bit of the lack of experience, but at the same time I feel like it's a little bit unfair how an older person has a higher chance of getting the job just simply because they have more experience than you, but you may have a higher degree than them. But basically, it seems like the older people will have an easier time getting their finances steady just because they can get a job easier, but the younger people will struggle to get a job just because they have to compete with all the older people who have all this experience. But not all hope is lost, because we can gain experience just as easily. We just have to get 20 years of experience at the age of 18. That's not that hard, right? Old people like to call us lazy, but the truth is that the opportunities that existed when they were young just simply don't exist now, and they don't really seem to understand that. I personally believe that if an old person had to live like we do now, they would just simply shut down and turn to dust. So, main point of the video, old people don't understand how hard it is for us. So what? The problem is that they are the only ones who can really fix it, since most of the lawmakers are very old. Like, have you seen the Supreme Court justices? Old people are professionals at being stubborn and ignoring facts that other people tell them, so they will never fully acknowledge just how hard it is for young people who are just starting out. So until all these ancient lawmakers choose to listen to us, which is never gonna happen, then there's not really anything our generation can really do because we're not in charge of anything. So we just kinda just have to suck it up and just keep working 10 jobs at a time just to be able to afford rent. That is kind of a depressing thing to say, but at the same time though, I don't really think anything's gonna get fixed anytime soon, so I feel like that's all we're gonna have to do. Not many people in my generation will be able to buy a house, and we will have to work ourselves to death if we want to survive at all. But the older generations will keep calling us lazy, when in reality they barely had to do anything back when they were young to actually succeed. The world simply isn't made for younger people like us. It's made for the older generations who are in charge right now. They made the decisions that led to this happening, and yet they refuse to acknowledge it. So since all these lawmakers are in charge of everything, and all these old people are lawmakers, and all these old people choose to ignore us, then basically our generation is completely messed up until our generation ages out and becomes old people. But by the time that happens, then it's going to be too late because all these old people are going to be homeless, or they're going to be barely able to afford anything. So that's kind of fun to think about, isn't it? So now that the rant's out of the way, let's go look at the house I've been building in the background. So I'm just kind of just swimming around just so you can see the whole outside, basically. I already moved all my stuff in there, and so that's basically what the outside looks like. It's not that pretty because, well, let's just face it, I'm not that good at building. Here, let's look at the inside, and then not really that much to see, but this is what we got, and there we go. So, not much, but it'll probably go for like $100,000 in the market. Actually, probably like $600,000 because of the square footage. I don't know. Housing market's crazy. I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked the rant. Please don't bully me. I tried my best on the house. Goodbye.